In the quiet spaces between breaths, where twilight meets the whisper of night, there exists a place untouched by the day's urgencies. Here, in this sacred pause, the ancient wisdom of the Buddha flows like moonlight through bamboo leaves, gentle and illuminating. Tonight, we walk together down a path worn smooth by countless seekers before us, a path that leads not outward into the world of doing, but inward into the realm of being. The cherry blossoms have long since fallen, their petals now part of the earth that nourishes new growth. In their gentle surrender, they teach us the first lesson of rest, that letting go is not loss, but transformation. Before we begin this journey into the Buddha's teachings on rest and stillness, I invite you, if it feels right, to offer your quiet support to this peaceful corner of the world. Perhaps a gentle subscription, a soft like, or a whispered comment telling us where in the world you rest tonight. Your presence here, listening in the darkness or dim light of your sacred space, is already a gift. Picture, if you will, a monk walking slowly through a forest at dusk. His footsteps make no sound on the moss-covered path. The air carries the faint scent of sandalwood incense from a distant temple, curling upward like prayers made visible. This is how we begin, with reverence, with slowness, with the understanding that wisdom reveals itself only to those who approach with empty hands and quiet hearts. The Buddha once said that all of life's suffering comes from our inability to rest, not just our bodies, but our minds, our hearts, our very souls. Tonight, we learn to rest as he taught, completely, trustingly, with the deep knowing that in stillness, we find not emptiness, but everything. What is the sound of peace before thought arises? This question floats through the evening air like the call of a distant temple bell, inviting us to listen with more than our ears. In the gentle teachings of the Buddha, questions are not problems to be solved, but doorways to be walked through, slowly with wonder. Imagine sitting beside a still mountain lake at dawn. The water mirrors the sky so perfectly that you cannot tell where heaven ends and earth begins. This is the mind in its natural state, clear, reflective, undisturbed by the winds of worry or desire. But somewhere in the distance, you hear the world awakening, birds calling, leaves rustling, the soft padding of deer coming to drink. Does this disturb the peace? Or is peace large enough to hold all sounds, all movement, all of life? The Buddha discovered in his own journey toward awakening that true rest is not the absence of activity, but the presence of awareness. Like a mother watching her sleeping child, awareness holds everything with tender attention, never grasping, never pushing away. It simply witnesses, loves, and allows. Consider the butterfly that alights on a flower. It does not clutch or claim. The blossom has its own. It sips the nectar with gratitude, then continues its dance through the garden. This is how we might approach our thoughts as we prepare for sleep, acknowledging them with kindness, receiving whatever sweetness they offer, then letting them flutter away into the vast sky of consciousness. In the ancient texts, there is a story of a student who asked the Buddha, "Master, if I let go of everything, my plans, my worries, my very sense of self, what will remain?" The Buddha smiled and pointed to the moon reflected in a bowl of water. "When the water is still," he said, "the moon appears by itself. You don't need to create peace. You only need to stop disturbing it." Tonight, as shadows lengthen and the day's heat gives way to cooling air, we begin to understand that rest is not something we must earn or achieve. It is our birthright, as natural as breathing, as effortless as the way flowers close their petals. When darkness falls, we need only remember how to receive it. The mountain does not try to be peaceful. It simply is. The river does not work to flow. It follows its nature. And you, dear friend, do not need to struggle to find rest. It has been waiting for you all along, patient as starlight, gentle as the first snow of winter, ready to embrace you the moment you stop running toward tomorrow and settle into the eternal now. In the Dhammapada, one of Buddhism's most beloved collections of verses, the Buddha speaks words that seem written for our restless modern hearts. Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. Tonight, we let that one word be rest, not as escape from life, but as the deepest engagement with it. 2,500 years ago, in the grove where the Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma, he taught that all beings seek happiness and flee from suffering. Yet in our seeking and fleeing, we create the very restlessness we long to escape. It is like a dog chasing its own tail. The faster it runs, the more elusive the goal becomes. The Buddha's revolution was simple and profound. Stop chasing, start being. The Four Noble Truths, often presented as doctrine, are actually invitations to rest. The first truth acknowledges that life contains suffering, not as pessimism, but as the relief of finally naming what we all feel. How restful it is to stop pretending that everything should be perfect, to exhale into the acceptance that struggle is part of the human story. This acknowledgement itself becomes a form of peace. The second truth reveals that our suffering comes from tana, literally thirst, our endless craving for things to be different than they are. Picture a person dying of thirst in a desert, constantly walking toward mirages that disappear upon approach. The Buddha points out gently that the oasis we seek is not ahead of us, but beneath us, in the simple act of stopping, of being present to what is actually here. In the third noble truth, we discover the most radical rest of all, the cessation of suffering through the cessation of craving. This doesn't mean becoming passive or uncaring, but learning to want what we have, to love what is given, to find fulfillment not in getting, but in being. Like a tree that doesn't yearn to be a mountain, we learn to rest in our own nature. The Eightfold Path, the fourth truth, is often misunderstood as a to-do list for spiritual achievement. But the Buddha described it as a raft to carry us across the river of suffering to the shore of peace. Once we reach that shore, a state of natural rest that is our birthright, we don't carry the raft on our backs forever. We leave it gratefully on the bank and walk freely into the forest of awakened life. The word Buddha itself means one who is awake, but we might equally translate it as one who is at rest. For what is awakening but the end of the dream that we are separate, lacking, incomplete? In that recognition comes the deepest rest imaginable, the rest of coming home to ourselves, of realizing we never actually left. Long ago, in a monastery nestled between misty mountains and whispering pines, there lived an old monk named Thich, and his name meant peaceful tranquility, and indeed, to be in his presence was like sitting beside a calm lake at sunset. The younger monks often wondered at his serenity, for he had once been a merchant in the bustling markets of Hanoi, a man driven by deadlines and deals, profit and loss. One evening, as autumn painted the leaves gold and red, a young monk named Min approached Thichan as he sat in meditation beneath the ancient Bodhi tree. "Venerable teacher," Min whispered, careful not to disturb the profound stillness that seemed to emanate from the elder. "I cannot sleep. My mind races like a startled deer, jumping from thought to thought. How did you learn to rest so completely?" Thich and opened his eyes slowly, and Min was surprised to see them sparkling with gentle humor. "Ah, young brother, you ask the right question, but perhaps not in the way you think. Tell me, when did you last watch the moon set?" I'm not sure, teacher. I'm usually asleep when the moon sets." "Come then," said Thichan, rising with the fluid grace of bamboo bending in wind. "Tonight we will keep the moon company as she makes her journey to the western hills." They walked in silence through the monastery gardens, past the lotus pond where night-blooming flowers opened like stars fallen to earth. Settling on a small hill overlooking the valley, they sat together as the full moon hung suspended between. the mountains like a great pearl in dark velvet. When I was young, Thichan began, his voice soft as falling leaves, I believed that rest was what happened when work stopped. I would collapse into bed each night, exhausted from chasing the next sale, the next opportunity, the next moment when life would finally begin. I slept, but I never rested. Do you understand the difference? Min shook his head, watching moonlight silver the teacher's weathered features. Sleep is what the body does, continued Thichan. Rest is what the soul remembers. I could sleep 8 hours and wake tired because my spirit had forgotten how to come home to itself. Watch the moon now. See how she moves across the sky? She is not hurrying toward the horizon, not anxious to reach her destination. She simply follows her nature, moment by moment, and in that following finds perfect peace. They sat in companionable silence as the moon continued her stately dance. A night bird called once, then fell quiet. The air carried the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of temple bells marking the hour. I learned to rest, Thichan continued, the night I finally stopped trying to sleep. Instead, I began to practice what the Buddha called mindfulness of death, not morbidly, but gratefully. I would lie in bed and imagine this day had been my last. What would I regret? What would I celebrate? And slowly, I realized that the day I had just lived was already complete, already perfect in its own way. There was nothing more to figure out, nothing more to achieve. I could let go. But teacher, Min asked softly, what about tomorrow? What about all the things undone? Thichan smiled and pointed to the moon, now lower in the sky, but still radiant. Does the moon worry about tomorrow night's journey when she is still completing tonight's? Tomorrow will bring its own moon, its own light, its own opportunities for beauty. Tonight, we rest in tonight. As if responding to his words, clouds began to drift across the moon's face, creating a display of light and shadow that was breathtaking in its impermanence. See, whispered Thichan, even the clouds know how to let go. They don't cling to the moon, don't try to possess her light. They pass across her face like thoughts across the mind of a meditator, acknowledged, appreciated, released. When dawn finally painted the eastern sky pink and gold, both monks rose to return to the monastery. Min noticed that his racing mind had somewhere in the night learned to walk instead of run, to flow like the gentle stream that wound through the valley below. Sleep well today, young brother, Thichan said as they parted at the meditation hall. And remember, rest is not something you do. It's something you allow. Like the moon, you need only follow your nature. Now we turn inward, like a river flowing toward its source, like a bird folding its wings after a long day's flight. In the Buddha's teaching, this inward journey is not a retreat from the world, but a return to the place where world and self meet in perfect harmony, the breath. Close your eyes, if they are not already closed, and feel your body settling into whatever surface supports you tonight. Notice how the earth rises up to meet you, how gravity becomes not a burden, but an embrace, drawing you down into safety, into rest. The Buddha taught that the body is our first and most faithful teacher, always demonstrating the art of being present, always showing us how to inhabit this moment with complete authenticity. With each breath, you become aware of the ancient rhythm that connects you to all life. This same breath that fills your lungs now has been breathed by countless beings before you, by the Buddha himself as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, by the monks and nuns who have carried these teachings across centuries, by every person who has ever sought peace in the midst of life's beautiful chaos. The breath asks nothing of you but presence. It doesn't require improvement or effort. It simply invites you to witness the miracle that you are, a conscious being capable of awareness, capable of love, capable of rest. In the Anapanasati Sutta, the Buddha's teaching on mindfulness of breathing, he describes 16 steps of breath meditation. But tonight, we need only the first, simply knowing when we breathe in and when we breathe out. Breathing in, you might silently acknowledge, I am breathing in. Breathing out, you might note, I am breathing out. Or perhaps, the words that come are simpler still. In ... out. Like waves meeting shore, like wind moving through leaves, your breath finds its own rhythm, its own perfect timing that needs no management from the thinking mind. As thoughts arise, and they will, dear friend, for this is the nature of mind. You need not see them as disturbances or failures. In Zen, thoughts are likened to clouds passing through the vast sky of awareness. The sky is not damaged by clouds, not diminished by them. It simply provides space for them to form and dissolve, to dance their temporary dance across the infinite. Blue, you might notice thoughts about tomorrow's responsibilities, memories from today, worries about things beyond your control. Meet each one with the same gentle attention. You might offer a child sharing a story, present, kind, non-judgmental. Then, like the loving parent who listens fully before guiding the child back to rest, gently return your attention to the breath. With each exhalation, feel yourself releasing not just the air from your lungs, but the day's accumulated tensions, the small and large concerns that you've carried like stones in your pockets. Let them fall away, not into abandonment or irresponsibility, but into trust. Trust that the universe is vast enough to hold your worries while you rest, wise enough to continue its ancient dance while you lay down the burden of constant doing. The Buddha spoke of a state called cessation, not the cessation of life or consciousness, but the cessation of struggle, of resistance, of the exhausting effort to be someone other than who you naturally are. In this cessation, something beautiful remains. Awareness itself, peaceful and spacious as a mountain meadow at dawn, empty and full simultaneously, like the pause between heartbeats where eternity lives. You are not trying to achieve some special state or have a mystical experience. You are simply allowing yourself to be as natural as water flowing downhill, as unforced as flowers opening to morning light. This is what the Buddha called right effort, not strain or struggle, but the gentle persistence of nature itself. Always moving toward balance, always seeking harmony. In the treasury of Buddhist wisdom lie jewels often overlooked, small teachings, paradoxical koans, and gentle mysteries that reveal themselves only to those who approach with empty hands and curious hearts. Tonight, let us explore some of these hidden truths, these gentle surprises that the Buddha and his followers have left for us, like smooth stones placed carefully along a moonlit path. There is a story rarely told of the Buddha's first night, after his awakening. As dawn approached after his long vigil beneath the Bodhi tree, he faced a profound choice. Having realized the deepest truths of existence, having seen through the illusion of separation that causes all suffering, he could simply rest in this perfect peace forever. Why return to the world of confused beings who might not understand or appreciate what he had to offer? For 7 weeks, the newly awakened Buddha sat in contemplation. Legend says that even the gods were concerned, for they recognized that such wisdom comes only once in countless ages. Finally, Brahma himself, the creator deity in Indian cosmology, appeared before the Buddha and made a request that would change the course of human history. Please, Blessed One, teach. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who would benefit from your wisdom. The Buddha looked out at the world with eyes of infinite compassion and saw what Brahma had seen, that among all the beings lost in their dreams of separation, some were ready to wake up. Not everyone, perhaps, but enough to make the effort worthwhile. And so began the 45 years of teaching that would give birth to one of the world's great wisdom traditions. But here is the hidden truth, the gentle surprise. The Buddha taught, not because he had to, but because rest, true rest, naturally expresses itself as compassion. When we stop struggling against life, we naturally begin to serve life. When we find our own peace, we cannot help but share it. Rest and love are not two different things, but one movement of the awakened heart. Consider the riddle of the empty cup, a favorite among Zen masters. A famous tea master once came to visit a Zen teacher, eager to learn about enlightenment, while demonstrating his own considerable knowledge. As the teacher began to pour tea into the visitor's cup, he continued pouring even after the cup was full, letting the tea overflow onto the table, onto the floor, everywhere. "Stop," cried the tea master. "The cup is full, no more tea can." "Go in." "Yes," smiled the Zen teacher. "And like this cup, you are full of your own ideas and knowledge. How can I pour anything new into you until you first empty yourself?" The hidden teaching here is not about becoming ignorant or abandoning what we know, but about approaching each moment, especially moments of rest and sleep, with what Zen calls beginner's mind. Each night is your first night of sleep. Each breath your first breath. Each moment of peace a completely fresh discovery. In this emptiness, this not knowing, we find the deepest rest of all, the rest of being truly present, truly available to what is actually happening rather than what we think should be happening. Another gentle mystery from the tradition tells of a monk who answered every question with a smile. Whether asked about the meaning of life, the nature of suffering, or the recipe for enlightenment, he would simply smile and bow. This continued for years until finally, just before his death, a student asked him why he had never spoken. "But I have been speaking all along," the monk whispered. "The smile was my teaching. The bow was my sermon. Silence was my loudest proclamation of the truth." In our noisy world, silence has become a radical act. Rest has become a form of rebellion against the cult of busyness. When you allow yourself to sleep peacefully, to rest without guilt, to simply be without justification, you are practicing the monk's teaching. You are smiling with your whole being, bowing to the sacredness of existence, speaking the wordless truth that peace is possible. Deep in the forest of the Buddha's teachings grows an understanding both simple and profound, that suffering and peace are not enemies locked in eternal combat, but dance partners in the great choreography of existence. To truly rest, we must first understand what keeps us from rest, not to fight it, but to embrace it with such complete acceptance that it transforms naturally into its opposite. Picture a river flowing toward the sea, encountering a great boulder in its path. The water does not curse the stone or struggle against it. Instead, it finds a way around, wearing the obstacle smooth with gentle persistence, until, over countless years, the boulder becomes part of the riverbed, actually helping to guide the water's flow. This is how the Buddha taught us to relate to our suffering, not as something to be conquered, but as something to be understood, accepted, and ultimately transformed through the alchemy of awareness. The first noble truth tells us that dukkha, often translated as suffering, is an inescapable part of existence. But the word dukkha has a deeper meaning, rooted in the image of a wheel with a misaligned axle. The wheel still turns, still serves its purpose, but with a persistent wobble that creates friction, discomfort, a sense that something is not quite right. This is the human condition, not tragic or terrible, but simply imperfect, marked by a fundamental unsatisfactoriness that arises from trying to find permanent happiness in an impermanent world. How restful it is to finally stop pretending that this wobble doesn't exist. How peaceful to cease the exhausting effort of trying to create a perfectly smooth ride through life. The Buddha's first teaching is actually an invitation to relaxation. The relaxation of acknowledging what is actually true, rather than what we wish were true, In the quiet hours before dawn, when the veil between sleeping and waking grows thin, we often feel this truth most clearly. Perhaps it's the subtle ache of loneliness, even when surrounded by love. Perhaps it's the whisper of mortality that reminds us nothing lasts forever. Perhaps it's simply the tender sadness that comes from being a conscious being in an uncertain world. The Buddha says, this is not a flaw in your spiritual practice or a sign of your failure to find happiness. This is the raw material from which peace is made. For suffering, understood properly, is not the opposite of peace, but its invitation. It is life's way of saying, come closer, look deeper. There is something here that needs your loving attention. Like a crying child who needs comfort, our suffering is not our enemy, but our teacher, pointing us toward what requires healing, what needs understanding, what calls for compassion. The peace that emerges from this embrace is unlike any other. It is not the fragile peace of having everything go our way, but the unshakable peace of being able to meet whatever comes with an open heart. It is not the temporary peace of pleasant circumstances, but the eternal peace of alignment with reality. As it actually is in the Dhammapada, the Buddha offers this luminous verse: all that we are is the result of what we have thought. If you speak or act with a peaceful mind, happiness will follow you like a shadow, never leaving. This happiness, this peace, is not dependent on external conditions, but arises naturally when the mind learns to rest in its own true nature, which is awareness itself, spacious and serene, as a mountain lake reflecting the sky. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, you might experiment with this radical acceptance. Instead of pushing away uncomfortable thoughts or feelings, you might greet them as old friends arriving for tea. Ah, worry, I see you've come to visit. Please sit down. What do you need me to know? This is not wallowing or indulgence, but the courageous kindness that allows suffering to reveal its hidden gift. The gift of teaching us to love what is difficult, to find peace not despite our imperfections, but through our willingness to meet them with tenderness. The deepest rest comes not from the absence of challenge, but from the presence of acceptance. Acceptance so complete that it transforms everything it touches. Like moonlight turning ordinary water into liquid silver, like loving attention turning suffering into compassion, like gentle awareness turning the restless mind into a sanctuary of peace. In the gentle philosophy of the Buddha, letting go is not an action, but a non-action. Not something we do, but something we stop doing. Like a hand that has been clenched so long, it has forgotten how to open. We have grown accustomed to holding tight to our plans, our identities, our hopes and fears, our very sense of self. Tonight, we learn the art of unclenching, of releasing, of allowing life to flow through us like water through cupped palms. The Buddha used a beautiful image to describe our usual relationship with experience. He spoke of a person whose house is on fire, who instead of fleeing to safety, runs from room to room gathering treasures. The gold coins hidden under the floorboards, the family photographs, the precious heirlooms passed down through generations. But the fire spreads faster than the person can gather, and soon they are trapped by their very efforts to save what they love. This is how we often approach life, clinging to moments of happiness as if we could make them permanent, fighting against moments of difficulty as if we could eliminate them forever. But the Buddha gently points out that the house is always on fire. Impermanence is not a problem to be solved, but the fundamental nature of existence. The art of letting go is learning to walk freely through the flames, carrying nothing but our presence, our awareness, our capacity to love what is here without needing to possess it. There is profound rest in this recognition. How exhausting it has been to be the curator of our experience, constantly trying to arrange life into a museum where only beauty is displayed and all suffering is kept in storage. How tiring to be the security guard of our happiness, standing vigilant at the gates of consciousness, checking the credentials of every thought and feeling. Letting go is the relief of retiring from these impossible jobs, of discovering that life manages quite well without our constant management in the Zen tradition. There is a practice called just sitting, shikantaza in Japanese. It means to sit without agenda, without trying to achieve any particular state of mind, without even trying to meditate in the conventional sense. You simply sit as a mountain sits, as a tree sits, as the earth itself sits in space, present, stable, requiring nothing from the moment but the gift of being here for it. This same quality can infuse the way we approach sleep and rest. Instead of trying to fall asleep, we practice just lying down. Instead of attempting to empty the mind of thoughts, we practice just being aware. Instead of working to create peace, we practice just allowing whatever peace is already here to reveal itself. The poet Rumi, though from a different tradition, captured this beautifully. Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Instead, let life live through you. And do not worry that your life is turning upside down. How do you know that the side you are used to is better than the one to come? Tonight, as you rest, you might experiment with this radical trust. What would it feel like to let go of the story that you are someone who has trouble sleeping? What would happen if you released the identity of being a worrier or an insomniac or someone who can't turn off their mind? Not through force or positive thinking, but through the gentle recognition that these are just thoughts, just stories we tell ourselves, not fundamental truths about who we are. The Buddha taught that our suffering comes not from our circumstances, but from our attachment to our circumstances being different. A person can be wealthy and miserable if they're attached to having more wealth. A person can be sick and peaceful if they're not attached to being well. This doesn't mean becoming passive or uncaring, but learning to distinguish between caring and clinging, between love and possession, between engagement and attachment, like autumn leaves that know when their season has ended, like flowers that bloom fully, then release their petals to the wind. Letting go is following our deepest nature. It is not loss, but liberation. Liberation from the exhausting work of trying to control the uncontrollable, the impossible task of making permanent what is designed to change in this letting go. Something beautiful remains, not the ego that grasps and fears, but the awareness that witnesses all grasping and fearing with infinite patience. Not the mind that plans and worries, but the spaciousness in which all planning and worrying arise and dissolve like waves on an ocean that remains forever calm at its depths. There is a Zen saying that goes, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This playful paradox points to one of Buddhism's most liberating truths, that awakening is not about becoming someone different, but about recognizing who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning, story, and struggle. Tonight, in the gentle space between waking and sleeping, we explore this recognition, this coming home to the present moment that asks nothing of you but your presence. There is a Zen saying that goes, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This playful paradox points to one of Buddhism's most liberating truths, that awakening is not about becoming someone different, but about recognizing who you have always been beneath the layers of conditioning, story, and struggle. Tonight, in the gentle space between waking and sleeping, we explore this recognition, this coming home to the present moment that asks nothing of you but your presence. The present moment is like a shy animal in the forest. The more you chase it, the more elusive it becomes. But if you sit quietly, with patient kindness, it will eventually come to you, curious and unafraid. The Buddha discovered this after years of extreme asceticism, of trying to wrestle enlightenment from the universe through sheer force of will. It was only when he sat down under the Bodhi tree with the simple intention to be present, not to achieve anything, just to be authentically here, That awakening revealed itself as natural as sunrise, as gentle as breath. What does it mean? To be present? Not present to some idealized version of this moment, stripped of difficulty or enhanced with spiritual special effects, but present to this moment exactly as it is, including any resistance you might feel to being present, including any thoughts about how you should be feeling different than you do, including the beautiful ordinariness of breathing, of existing, of being conscious in a conscious universe. The word Buddha means one who has woken up, but woken up to what? Not to some transcendent realm beyond ordinary experience, but to the extraordinary nature of ordinary experience itself. The taste of water when you're thirsty, the feeling of cool air on warm skin, the simple miracle of consciousness knowing itself. These are not lesser experiences we must transcend, but the very substance of awakening Dot in the famous Heart Sutra. One of Buddhism's most beloved texts, we find the revolutionary declaration: form is emptiness, emptiness is form. This is not philosophical abstraction, but direct pointing to the nature of present moment experience. Your thoughts are both real, you experience them, and empty, they have no solid, permanent existence. Your emotions are both valid, they arise from authentic causes, and impermanent, they change and dissolve naturally. Your body is both substantial, you can feel its weight, its temperature, its aliveness, and insubstantial. It is mostly space, constantly changing, part of the larger dance of energy that is the universe. This recognition brings tremendous rest. You no longer need to fix your thoughts because you see their transparent, temporary nature. You no longer need to control your emotions because you understand they are weather patterns in the sky of awareness, real but passing. You no longer need to improve your experience because you recognize that awareness itself, the you that knows all experiences, is already perfect, already complete, already at rest. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh taught a practice he called touching the earth. You might try this now, feeling your body's connection to whatever surface supports you. Through that contact point, you are in direct relationship with the earth itself, the soil and stone, the vast magnetic field, the spinning planet that carries you through space at unimaginable speeds while you lie still in perfect safety. This is not metaphor but fact. You are not separate from this earth, but part of it, not alien to this universe, but arising from it, not lost in space and time, but intimately woven into their fabric. In this recognition, the restless search for meaning ends not in answers, but in the understanding that you are the meaning you've been seeking. The quest for love ends not in finding someone to love you, but in discovering that love is what you are made of. The longing for peace ends not in achieving some special state, but in recognizing that peace is your natural condition, temporarily obscured but never actually lost. As thoughts continue to arise and pass away in the sky of your awareness, as sensations ebb and flow in the body like tides, as the breath continues its ancient rhythm, you might notice that you are not any of these changing phenomena, but the unchanging awareness that knows them all. This awareness needs no improvement, no spiritual practice, no achievement. It simply is, as constant as space, as reliable as the laws of physics, as intimate as your own heartbeat. In the moonlit garden of Buddhist wisdom, we encounter one of its most beautiful paradoxes, that the deepest rest comes not from doing nothing, but from doing everything with such complete presence that doing and being merge into one effortless flow. The Buddha called this right effort, not the strain of forcing outcomes, but the natural persistence of a river flowing toward the sea, meeting obstacles with fluid grace, never fighting against its own nature. Picture a master calligrapher at work in the early morning hours. Her brush moves across the rice paper with movements so fluid they seem choreographed by the universe itself. There is intense focus here, profound skill, decades of practice distilled into each stroke. Yet watching her, you sense no tension. No struggle, no separation between artist, brush, and paper. The effort is total, and the effortlessness is complete, two sides of the same coin, the outer expression of inner harmony. This is the quality the Buddha encouraged in all aspects of life, including, especially, the practice of rest. Sleep becomes not something we fall into accidentally after exhaustion, but something we enter consciously, with the same graceful intention the calligrapher brings to her morning practice. We make effort to create the conditions for rest. The quiet room, the comfortable position, the settling of daily concerns. But then we practice the profound effortlessness of allowing rest to come in its own time, in its own way. The great Indian sage Patanjali, whose teachings paralleled and influenced Buddhist thought, described the perfect meditation posture as steady and easeful, sthira and sukha in Sanskrit. These two qualities must be held in perfect balance. Enough alertness to remain present, enough relaxation to remain open. Too much effort and we create tension. Too little effort and we drift into unconsciousness. But in the sweet spot between these extremes, we find what the Buddha called the middle way, the path that avoids all extremes and finds peace in the center dot in the Zen tradition. There is a famous question that points to this paradox. What is the sound of one hand clapping? The obvious answer, that one hand cannot clap, that sound requires two hands meeting, misses the deeper teaching. The one hand is always clapping. We simply don't recognize its sound because we're listening for the wrong thing. Similarly, we are always already at rest in our deepest nature. We simply don't recognize this rest because we're looking for a different kind of experience. The Buddha discovered this truth during his night of awakening. After years of extreme asceticism had left him near death, and after years of royal luxury had left him spiritually empty, he found the middle path, neither indulgence nor deprivation, but the gentle persistence of someone who knows that truth reveals itself to patience, not to force dot. As he sat beneath the Bodhi tree that final night, he was visited by Mara, the embodiment of doubt, fear, and spiritual laziness. Mara whispered, "Give up this futile quest. You will never find what you seek. Rest in ignorance. It's easier." But the Buddha recognized this as false rest, the rest of resignation, of spiritual sleep, of turning away from the profound possibilities of awakening consciousness. There is another kind of false effort that Mara also offers, the frantic spirituality that mistakes busyness for progress, accumulation for realization, doing for being. This is the effort of the person who meditates 12 hours a day, but never learns to be present for a single breath, who reads every sacred text, but never hears the teaching and the sound of rain on the roof. True effort, the Buddha realized, is like breathing, natural, rhythmic, responsive to the needs of the moment. When you need to inhale, you inhale completely. When you need to exhale, you exhale completely. You don't try to inhale and exhale simultaneously. Don't hold your breath indefinitely. Don't breathe according to someone else's rhythm. You simply follow the intelligence that already knows how to breathe, how to live, how to be. Tonight, as you practice the art of conscious rest, you might experiment with this balance. Make the gentle effort to return attention to the breath when the mind wanders, but don't make it a struggle. Create the intention to be present, but don't grasp at presence like a prize to be won. Open to peace like a flower opens to morning light, not through force, but through willingness, through the simple receptivity that knows how to receive. What is being offered? The Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh tells a story of trying to grow lettuce in his monastery garden. At first, he would check the seeds daily, worrying that they weren't growing fast enough, adding more water, more fertilizer, more attention. But the lettuce grew poorly under such anxious care. Finally, he learned to plant the seeds with love, provide the necessary conditions, then trust the seeds to do what seeds know how to do. I learned to practice like a lettuce seed, he says. Not forcing, just being faithful to my nature. This is the paradox resolved. We practice effortlessness with great effort, and we make effort with complete effortlessness. Like the moon that neither pushes nor pulls the tide, but simply exists in its fullness, allowing its gravitational influence. To create the ocean's rhythm, we learn to rest in our own natural presence, and let that presence create the conditions for deeper and deeper peace. In this understanding, sleep becomes not an escape from consciousness, but its deepest expression. Consciousness so relaxed, so trusting, so effortlessly effortful that it can release even the need to remain awake. Knowing that awareness itself never sleeps, never dies, never fails to hold us in its infinite embrace. In the ancient texts, the Buddha speaks of a profound teaching that exists in the spaces between words, in the pause between breaths, in the silence that holds all sound. Tonight, as the world settles into its own rhythm of rest, we explore this silence, not as the absence of something, but as the presence of everything, the vast and peaceful emptiness from which all experience arises and to which it returns. Listen now to the soundscape of your evening. Perhaps there is the distant hum of traffic, the settling of the building around you, the whisper of your own breathing. Notice how each sound emerges from silence and dissolves back into silence, like waves arising from the ocean and merging back into its depths. The silence is not interrupted by these sounds. Rather, silence is their source, their container, their final resting place. This silence that holds all sound is like the awareness that holds all experience. Just as silence is not disturbed by music, but actually makes music possible, your essential awareness is not disturbed by thoughts, emotions, or sensations, but actually makes them possible. You are not the changing content of consciousness, but the unchanging context in which all content appears. The Buddha often taught through the use of space as a metaphor. He would point out that space is not destroyed when objects move through it. A bird flying through the sky leaves no trace. A cloud forming and dissolving does not damage the vast blue emptiness that contains it. Similarly, the space of your awareness is not diminished by whatever experiences move through it. Worry does not make awareness worried. Sadness does not make awareness sad. Even sleepiness does not make awareness sleepy. In the Japanese tea ceremony, there is a concept called ma, the meaningful pause, the pregnant emptiness that gives significance to action. The tea master does not rush from one movement to the next, but allows each gesture to emerge from stillness and return to stillness. The beauty lies not only in the pouring of tea or the placement of the cup, but in the spacious silence that makes each movement sacred. We can bring this same quality to our approach to rest. Instead of filling every moment with activity, with planning, with entertainment or distraction, we learn to appreciate the ma of existence, the natural pauses, the blessed emptiness, the restful spaces where nothing needs to happen, and we can simply be. There is a Zen story of a master who was asked to explain the deepest teaching of Buddhism. Instead of speaking, he held up his hand and snapped his fingers once. "Did you hear that?" he asked. "Yes, master," replied the student. "Good," said the master. "Now tell me, where has that sound gone?" The student looked puzzled, searching for an answer. After a long pause, the master smiled. "Exactly," he said. "That's where everything goes. That's where everything comes from. That's what you are." This pointing to the space between sounds, the gap between thoughts, the pause between heartbeats, is pointing to your true nature, not the small self that comes and goes like weather patterns, but the vast self that is like the sky itself, unchanging, ever-present, peacefully aware of all the weather that passes through it. As you settle deeper into rest tonight, you might begin to notice these gaps more clearly. The space between one thought and the next, the moment of quiet between exhaling and inhaling, the profound stillness that exists at the center of all activity. like the eye of a hurricane where everything is perfectly calm. This is not a void or absence, but a fullness beyond description. Pregnant with all possibilities, rich with presence, complete in ways that having more experiences could never make you complete. The mystic poets of many traditions have tried to capture this. Lao Tzu, writing about the empty space in a bowl that makes it useful. Rumi describing the silence that is the source of all music. The Buddha pointing again and again to the unconditioned. Awareness that needs nothing added to it to be whole in this recognition comes the deepest rest possible. Not the rest of unconsciousness, but the rest of superconsciousness. Not the peace of having no experiences, but the peace of being so. Completely present to experience that you recognize yourself as its very source. Like space itself, you are empty and therefore able to contain everything. Like silence itself, you are quiet and therefore able to give birth to all sound, all meaning, all love. The Buddha's final teaching, his last words before entering parinirvana, were, "Decay is inherent in all compounded things. Work out your salvation with diligence." But the diligence he spoke of is not frantic effort. It is the patient, gentle persistence of returning again and again to this recognition of what you truly are. The silence between sounds, the space between thoughts, the awareness in which all of life's beautiful and difficult experiences arise and pass away like dreams in the vast, peaceful mind of the universe. There exists a monastery that has no walls, no bells to mark the hours, no robes or rituals, and yet it is the most sacred space many of us will ever enter. This is the monastery of sleep, where every night we are invited to practice the deepest surrender, to engage in the most profound meditation, to participate in a mystery that connects us to all beings who have ever lived and ever will live. In the traditional Buddhist monasteries, scattered across the mountains and valleys of Asia, the day follows an ancient rhythm. There is a time for sitting meditation, walking meditation, eating meditation, working meditation. But perhaps the most essential practice, rarely spoken of but universally observed, is sleeping meditation, the art of conscious rest, of entering. Sleep with the same mindful attention one brings to formal spiritual practice. The great Thai forest master Ajahn Chah used to teach his monks that sleep was not a break from practice, but its deepest expression. When you lie down to rest, he would say, you are not escaping from the Dharma, but entering into it completely. Sleep is the ultimate letting go, the final surrender of the day's accumulations, the perfect practice of non-attachment. Consider the profound trust required for sleep. Every night, you release conscious control of your body, your thoughts, your very sense of self. You enter a realm where the normal rules of cause and effect, time and space, self and other, become fluid and dreamlike. This is not a small thing, but perhaps the most radical act of faith you perform regularly, the faith that it is safe. To let go completely, that you will be held and sustained, even when you are not holding and sustaining yourself. The Buddha spoke of 3 kinds of sleep. The sleep of the ordinary person, unconscious and driven by exhaustion. The sleep of the practitioner, entered with awareness and gratitude, and the sleep of the awakened one, who rests so completely in the present moment that the distinction between sleeping and waking becomes meaningless. There is only continuous presence, continuous peace. Tonight, you have the opportunity to practice this second kind of sleep, perhaps touching the edges of the third. As you prepare for rest, you might begin by creating what the tradition calls right intention. Not the intention to achieve anything in particular, but the intention to meet whatever arises with kindness, to honor this time of rest as sacred, to approach sleep as a spiritual practice rather than merely a biological necessity. The Vietnamese Zen teacher Sister Chan Kong speaks beautifully of this. When I place my head on the pillow, I imagine I am laying it in the lap of the Buddha. When I pull the covers over my body, I imagine the Buddha's loving kindness covering me completely. When I close my eyes, I am not shutting out the world, but opening to a deeper reality. In sleep, we practice what the Buddha called the 4 Brahma Viharas, the divine abodes of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Without effort, without intention, we naturally let go of the day's grievances and competitions. The mind softens its judgments, the heart releases its defended positions. Rich and poor, success and failure, young and old, in sleep, these distinctions dissolve into the democratic darkness where all beings are equal participants in the mystery of rest. Sleep also teaches us directly about impermanence, one of Buddhism's 3 jewels of wisdom. Each night we experience the dissolution of the solid sense of self that seems so permanent during waking hours. In dreams, we might be anyone, anywhere, anyone. We accept these transformations completely, never insisting that dream logic conform to daytime rationality. This is perfect practice for accepting the impermanent nature of all experience, all identity, all circumstances. And in deep sleep, we touch what the tradition calls the unborn, unbecome, unmade, unfabricated, the source awareness that exists prior to all experience, the consciousness that observes all states, including the state of being unconscious. Even when we don't remember our dreams, even when we seem to disappear completely into the void of deep sleep, something remains aware. This something is what you truly are, not the person with a name and history and plans for tomorrow, but the awareness that knows all names, all histories, all plans as temporary appearances in its eternal presence. As you enter this monastery of sleep tonight, you carry with you the offerings that Buddhist practitioners have always brought to their meditation, gratitude for the day that has passed, compassion for all beings who struggle and rest, wisdom about the impermanent nature of all experience, and the deep faith that surrender leads not to loss, but to the discovery of what can never be lost, the peace that passeth understanding, the love that requires no object, the awareness that is your true face, shining serenely in the darkness, like a moon that needs no sun to be luminous. And so we come to the gentle close of our journey together, like a river reaching the vast ocean of rest, like daylight slowly yielding to the tender embrace of night. We have walked the ancient paths of Buddhist wisdom, not as scholars seeking knowledge, but as tired travelers seeking respite, not as spiritual athletes trying to achieve some perfect state, but as ordinary human beings learning to recognize the extraordinary peace that has been with us all along. In these past hours, we have discovered that rest is not something we must earn through good behavior or spiritual accomplishment, but our birthright as conscious beings in a conscious universe. We have learned that sleep is not escape from life, but the deepest participation in life's rhythm of expansion and contraction, activity and rest, manifestation and return to source. We have touched the understanding that peace is not found in the absence of difficulty, but in the presence of acceptance, not in having no thoughts, but in relating to all thoughts with gentle awareness. The Buddha's teachings, passed down through 25 centuries of practitioners, all point to this moment, this eternal now, where you rest in your own being, needing nothing added to be complete, requiring no improvement to be worthy of love, asking for no credentials to deserve peace. You are already everything you have ever sought to become. You are already home in the place you have been trying to reach. As your breathing naturally deepens and slows, as your body settles more completely into the surface that supports you, as your mind releases its hold on the day's concerns and tomorrow's possibilities, you participate in the same mystery that has blessed every generation of humans since consciousness first recognized itself in the mirror of existence. You join the vast Sangha, the community of practitioners that includes not only the monks and nuns in distant monasteries, but everyone who has ever laid down in trust, who has ever closed their eyes in faith, who has ever surrendered to the great unknown of sleep, The cherry blossoms we imagined at the beginning of our journey have long since fallen, but their essence continues in new buds waiting for spring. Just as the peace you touch tonight continues in every moment, sometimes obvious, sometimes hidden, but never truly absent. The monk we pictured walking the forest path has completed his journey, but the path remains for other travelers. Just as these teachings remain available whenever you need reminding of your own inherent wholeness. In Japanese tradition, there is a beautiful custom called forest bathing Shinrin-yoku, the practice of immersing oneself completely in the natural world, receiving its gifts of silence and peace. Tonight, you practice something similar, bathing in the forest of your own awareness, letting its quiet wisdom wash over you, its spacious presence hold you, its unconditional love restore you. The Dhammapada tells us, better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace. That word tonight is rest, not as temporary cessation, but as eternal return, not as earned reward, but as freely given grace, not as future possibility, but as present reality. In resting, you embody the Buddha's highest teaching, that nirvana is not a distant goal, but the natural state of awareness when it stops seeking anywhere else for what it already is. Thank you, dear friend, for sharing this quiet path with me tonight, for allowing these ancient teachings to meet you in the intimate sanctuary of your own experience, for demonstrating the courage it takes to be still in a world that worships busyness, to be gentle in a culture that prizes aggression, to rest in a society that has forgotten the sacred art of doing nothing. As you drift now into whatever state of rest awaits you, whether sleep comes quickly or slowly, whether your dreams are vivid or forgotten, whether you rest deeply or lightly, know that you are held by the same compassionate awareness that holds all beings, supported by the same love that moves the sun and stars, blessed by the same peace that is the Buddha nature of every conscious being in every realm of existence. Wherever you rest your head tonight, whether on silk or straw, whether in mansion or humble dwelling, whether surrounded by family or alone with the infinite, may peace find you there. May the Dharma illuminate your dreams with wisdom, your sleep with serenity, your rest with the deep knowing that all is ultimately well in the vast interconnected web of being. May all beings be happy. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free from suffering. And may you, in particular, rest tonight in the profound understanding that you are not separate from this great wish, but its living embodiment, not seeking the Buddha, but revealing the Buddha nature that you have never, for even one moment, ceased to be. Good night, and be well, dear friend. The moon continues her ancient journey across the sky. The earth continues its patient spin through space. The universe continues its eternal dance of creation and rest. And you, beautiful, temporary, eternal you, continue to be held by it all, loved by it all, blessed by it all, now and in every moment of this precious, impermanent, utterly sacred existence. Sleep well, rest completely.
you.